Welcome, Carles. We're very happy to have our second guest, who is Carles. He's working in La Col Cooperative. It's another cooperative that works established in Barcelona, and they're working since 2008, I think. And of course, they are the ones that created La Borda, who was the first cooperative housing under the grant of use model. And Carles was involved in this project. So yeah, we're very happy to have you with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hola, Diego. I just got here 15 minutes ago, so I just heard the end and the questions and so on. So I hope I would not repeat too much to what Diego was saying, because obviously we share a lot the framework and the context, and the projects have a lot of similarities. So I think I will try to keep it as short as possible and leave for a lot of time for the questions. Let me share the screen. Well, as Zoe was saying, I'm part of La Col, and I was part of the project actually not as a designer. There were a couple of my colleagues who were part of the design team, but I'm also involved as a user, because this is where I live. I don't know if you see the wooden ceiling, because this is where I am now. So most of the time when I talk about Labor, I talk much as a inhabitant than as an architect, although obviously I've been doing a lot of work related to that. Let me see if I will show you Laborda and some other examples that we did. Yep. I think you should be seeing properly. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I come as a representative of La Col, which is also a cooperative. So you've been hearing a lot these days about housing cooperatives, but obviously there's other types of cooperative, including workers' cooperative, as Diego's where he belongs in Celovert, or in my case, La Col. We are a team of 20 people, 11 of us partners, and then we have other people who are hired or trainees. So more or less, we are 19, 20 people right now, doing mostly cooperative housing, not only design, but also helping into the project management, the construction management, a lot of legal stuff related to the housing cooperatives, but also we do other type of projects. As Zoe was saying, we started in 2009. So this year we're doing our 15th anniversary. First, we started as students in this small rented studio in the ground floor of the neighborhood of Sants in Barcelona. And then 4 years ago, we moved to this space called La Comunal, which is a place that we share 10 organizations from the social economy. So we have a newspaper, we have web designers, we have La Dinamo, which is a foundation I will mention you later. We have a restaurant, and under us, we have this bookstore as well. So if you ever come to Barcelona, you are welcome to come to this space. Look for La Ciutat Invisible, and you will find us. And obviously, the most known project we have is La Borda itself, which I guess many of you at least have seen a picture or something. Maybe what you didn't hear or see or read so much is about all the process behind this project, no? And the images, the pictures that you see in magazines, they don't reflect all the effort that these type of projects involve, no? And I'm sure that these days you've been hearing from Zurich or Germany, like similar to us, all the human, all the legal, all the economical aspects related to the development of this kind of projects. In the case of La Borda, started in 2012 out of a group of people who were organized already in the neighborhood for another site of a social center. And from there, they managed to get access to land. And then the group was created, the group expanded, the project was a little bit more defined until when we moved in at the end of 2018, beginning of 19. So actually now has been our 5th anniversary of living here, and we were just last month throwing a big party. So I would assume that Diego and the other days you've been discussing already about the what do we call grant of use. Probably is what you would call just cooperative housing in general, but in Spain we have to make this definition because we have other types of housing cooperatives that are owner occupied. Here we think this is very important, no? That the outputs that we have on the architectural design are very much related to these conditions from this cooperative housing. No, it would not be possible to have the same results on other conditions if you don't have, for instance, all the democratic organization. No, if you have a lot of collective spaces, but you don't have a democratic organization, this can be a place for conflict. No, because some neighbor will make a party, will make noise, and it will create conflict, and you would not have all the tools necessary to mediate this conflict. So it's not evident when you see that people from the more capitalistic point of view trying to copy and replicate some of these designs without all the rest, because then you will end up having some trouble. No, or the same with the collective ownership and the right of use. No, that it's very much related to this idea of expanding or decreasing your apartment or changing your apartment, as Diego was saying on the Q&A. No, La Borda was not the first of housing of this type, but was the first in public land in Spain. Before there was some experiences in rural areas in private land, and obviously it's for us in the context of Catalonia and Spain, it's a very new model, but has been growing very quick. No, these are numbers for the last 7 years. No, and how this has been expanding very, very quickly. On black, you have the units that are already finished, and probably now there will be way more. And all the units that we have under development in Catalonia, because they already have the land, because they already bought a building. No, so even if we started from very almost zero, and we are still a very little, like a drop in the sea compared to the ownership and the rent market. We are we have a lot of hope because we are growing in a good pace. And especially in the case of Barcelona, these are the projects that at least have the land or the building. 16 of them are in public land, 3 of them are in private land. 7 of them, I think, they're already finished. And then the ones that have the orange circle are the ones that we did or that we are doing. No, so we were very lucky. We were part of the initial movement and also helping to develop this model. And now we managed to become like a reference on that field. No, so we are very happy to have this experience as well. And for us, what makes this model interesting is especially these different concepts that I want to touch today, because obviously you can focus on a lot of different things. First of all, and I heard that Diego was mentioning all this involvement of the user, which is very untypical, because normally in collective housing, your client would be one single developer, either private or public, but not the final user. This is what we have in cooperatives, and this is like a challenge, but also an opportunity very good for us, to adjust better the needs of the real needs of users into current housing, because what we see in market housing or even in public housing is that there's a lot of things that we repeat from the past without even questioning them. No, so this gives us an opportunity to discuss with people, to present them alternative, to hear what they want to, what they have in mind, what they imagine. No, we start in our case from scratch. We from the first workshops, asking users to bring us references, to bring us images on what they have in mind, and then in our process we go little by little, focusing a little bit more. No, maybe with some proposals, maybe with one proposal, but very open to discussion. I think that you were also discussing that with Diego before, no? But this is a process. Actually, we learn a lot from La Borda. In the case of La Borda, we did a lot of workshops with the users to define almost everything. Later, we realized that it was maybe too much, because these groups, they have to take a lot of decisions, not only on architectural, they have to take decisions on legal, on economic, on how they want to live. So it became a little overwhelming. And also, we saw that there's a lot of things that even if we would love to give a lot of freedom, maybe sometimes we are very much restricted for legal reasons, restricted for economical reasons. So we saw in several projects that we opened a lot the opportunities, and then it was frustrating because we always ended up in the same solutions, especially for economic constraints. No, so now we are being a little bit more selective on the questions that we open to the community. For instance, something that we saw that it was maybe not necessary to participate with the whole group were a lot of static decisions, because you can discuss on a more in a more fair way or in a more constructive way, if you want a communal kitchen, or if you want the laundry to be in the first floor or in the rooftop. No, there's elements that people can have an objective debate on that. But if you want to have a debate that you can have a consensus on, if we paint the facade blue or red or green, it's going to be impossible not to have people got together on what's the best color. There's no reasonable objectival decision, no reasons to make it a consensus decision. So now we are pulling back in some of the participatory parts and trying to give more time to those that we think are more important or that have a bigger impact, especially on the future, no? On how we can adjust better the units to all the different typologies of people, or how can we make the communal spaces more useful and better equipped, no? So we're trying to focus in a different way. For us, it's also interesting, this type of projects, because we can also engage users in the construction. In some cases, it's not always the case. This depends a lot on the skills that the group has. No, so in some cases, like La Borda, we had a couple of neighbors that were carpenters, so they had a lot of knowledge on wood. So we could do a lot of workshops on the weekends based on using wood as a material for construction, and we could also present the building unfinished, no? And some things we are still finishing them even 5 years later. But this is only because the group was also willing and had the skills and the strength. No, in some cases we had to finish the building almost everything because there was no energy or no knowledge. In some other cases, even the opposite. We are doing way more self-construction. Then the positive aspect of having the users is that not from the beginning, that we can know how is the group, know what's the reality of the group, and even on terms of household composition, on how they live now in their current apartments, on what's working in their apartments and what's not. And we see a lot of things that go against the flow on conventional housing. No, so you see still a lot of like a trend to deliver a lot of units with a lot of smaller rooms because they sell more expensive, even if the household composition in Spain and most Western countries is that half of the households are one person or two people. No, but we still people have in mind that they need a lot of bedrooms. And why is that? No, why we have this embedded in our brain, and why is the market trying to sell us apartments with a lot of bedrooms? No, here we saw at the beginning of La Borda, now it has changed a little bit, but there was only one household that was the classical family we have in mind of two parents and two children. No, and 27 out of 28 were different. We had adults that were not couples living together. We had a lot of single people. We had single mothers. We had people who were divorced. So we have all this diversity, and we wanted to adjust to this diversity. The fact that we had these users up front and this user participation allowed us then to redefine what is collective housing. No, collective housing can be more than just individual units. No, and I guess you saw it in Ciudades and the projects that Diego showed. No, in our case, how we work that with the communities is that we force them to reflect what means housing. Because when we start these processes, many people only have in mind that house is where you cook, where you sleep, and not much. No, but we have a lot of activities that we do at home. There's a lot of people who work at home in different ways. There's a lot of things related to care of oneself or the others, of storing things, of safety, of pleasure, of leisure. And then there's a lot of things that are maybe not necessary in the house, but related to the house, like energy, mobility, economy, health, not that we can also incorporate into housing. And the process that we do is we ask people where they want to solve these things. Does it have to be solved at the individual level? Do you want to solve it in the household? Can you join with some other households, but maybe not the whole community? Can you do it with the whole community? Or even it's not necessary because it's already present in the neighborhood and we can save some spaces and do some others. With that in mind, we jump from this conventional scheme of a house that solves everything within the house and very little common areas with only the staircase and the elevator machines and so on, to this other scheme when we have smaller units and community areas. And it's important to stress that we have smaller units, because if you only put community areas and conventional housing, it's going to be more expensive. Obviously, if you put community areas, you are using floor space that you have to take out from units. So otherwise, you make units smaller, or it's going to cost even more. No, and now all our projects are social housing, so we are very limited to the cost. We are very limited to what they can charge afterwards as a fee or as a rent. No, so many times when I see students' projects when they touch cooperative housing, obviously they don't have the economic aspect in mind because they haven't started dealing with the harsh reality. But I really encourage you, even if you want to be generous, to be realist as well. Know that if you just add extra community spaces, somebody has to pay for that. What we saw on average on the projects of Barcelona that we were able to study a couple of years ago is that we are around 10, 11% of the total surface dedicated to communal spaces. This depends on the project, depending if it's more, for instance, there's a project for seniors, for elderly people that have all the same small unit and they want to share a lot of spaces. In these cases, there's a lot more of surface dedicated to communal spaces. Or in big projects, they can be more efficient, and then there's a less percentage of surface dedicated to communal spaces, because in total, no, they have more surface. What we see, or why we do that? No, why do we share? For us, the very first reason is to be more efficient and more sustainable and to save even money. And it's very clear when we look at the the washing machines. No, in La Borda, instead of having 28, we only have 2 industrial. Now we have 1 extra because we needed a smaller machine. But we saw it was more than enough. No, and this was something that was very scary for much of the people before moving in, and now nobody would go back. No, nobody has a washing machine at home, and when you talk to people, they say that it was nonsense to have a washing machine at home, which is something that you use 1, 2, 3 hours maybe a week, and the rest of the week it's there sitting, taking space, taking heating. It breaks every 6, 7 years, and you have to buy a new one. No, so it's way more clever to share. It's also more efficient. These machines that we use are more efficient than a conventional domestic machine. They take less time, so it's even more sustainable. The second reason to share is actually the important thing is that we share not only things related to leisure. It's not that we share swimming pool, tennis court. We share spaces and services that are related to everyday care. So kitchens, related to washing your clothes and hanging your clothes, related to taking care of others. No, so these are activities that if you think on conventional housing, normally they have been devoted the worst space of the house, the smallest space of the house, because we want to be efficient, no, and give the big space to the living room and maybe the smaller space to the kitchen, which means that they end up having only space for one person, and statistics still say that this person in most of the cases is a woman. No, so if we make these spaces bigger, if we make them transparent, visible, that you can see who's doing the task, if you make them in a way that more than one person can be doing the task, if you do it in a way that you can be doing more than one thing at the same time, no? And this has not been staged. These pictures are real. Like people normally, they do the laundry with the children because it's next to the big room that you will see later where they can play. And then they go up to this terrace and they hang it and has swings for children. So you can be doing your laundry at the same time that you're taking care of your children, no? So all these spaces and the way they are designed, they help us to have a more balanced, gender balance share of the everyday activities. This is the case of La Terrace of La Balma, that the second project that we completed, that follows the same idea, no, with this place where you hang the laundry, that is also a leisure space. Now, actually, these have solar panels where you see the metal beams. This again, La Borda in the ground floor, where we have this communal kitchen and living room on the ground floor. This is a picture from the beginning. Now it's full of tables. But this is also to show the third reason why we share. No, we share also to something that I like to call communitarian luxuries. No, things that I could not have at my home with my salary. But if we get together with others, we can have. No, if I get together with others, I can allow myself to have this great space where we once a week have dinner together. Actually, now after the lecture, I will go down because we have dinner on Wednesdays, and that then I can also use for my personal events. Like last week, we did a party with the school of my children, and we were like 15 kids and 30 adults in this space and using this kitchen that it's better than many restaurants have. Something that we learned from La Borda, no? And obviously there's a lot of learnings related to construction, related to management, related to design, but something that we learned from the communal spaces, and that I think it's important to have in mind now, is how you can open these communal spaces to the neighborhood. La Borda has a commercial space that you will see later that is open to the neighborhood. But the problem is that we have very good spaces like this one that even if we use them a lot, they are still underused. No, they they could serve also for other functions, especially open to the neighborhood. But we designed it in a way, and in the case of La Borda, that it was difficult to open to the exterior community because it's very much connected to the private units. So it's impossible to separate the domestic space from this intermediate space, no? So what we did in La Palma, the second project, was much an easy decision if you take it into account from the beginning, was to have a second door for the communal living and kitchen. This allow us, no, if you see here on the left, has a first door and then a second door that separates the communal kitchen from the staircase that leads you to the apartments. And this allows us to share, or this allows the community of La Palma to share this space to the organizations in the neighborhood. And they use it a lot. There's, for instance, a group of people who are building now their own cooperative housing project. And because they don't have it yet, they meet here. Not so this small design solution allowed the group to be more open to the exterior community and to share their own resources. This back to La Borda, the big multifunctional space that it's next to the laundry. In the future, this is going to be separated, the laundry and this space, but it's something that's still on the list of things to do. This is probably the image that got most of the times in the news, on the magazines and so on. And it's actually the hardest space to use because of economic constraints. It was only closed with this polycarbonate. So in winter, it's a little bit cold and it's very noisy because of the street being there. But we could not do it differently because of monetary problems. But now it's pretty much the space for the children. Almost every afternoon, there's children playing there. So it's actually it's their own space. And at the end of the metallic stairs, we have two guest rooms, one for 2 people and another one for 4 people. And these actually are the most used space in the building. When we were asking the neighbors, what would you do differently, they said we would make even more rooms of these or make it more like small apartments. Now they share the bathroom and they use the communal kitchen when guests from, which means family or friends from the people living there, come. They stay there, but they have to share these spaces. And it's used much of the time. Like almost every weekend is full, almost on the holidays is full. Something nice that happens is that when the rooms are full and you still want to host somebody, there's a lot of sharing between the community, you know. So there's a lot of messages like, oh, the guest rooms are full, but my mother is coming, maybe somebody away. And it happens a lot that people lend their own apartments to their neighbors to help them host their visits. And then in the ground floor of La Borda, there's this commercial space that is occupied by a food co-op that was already present in the neighborhood, and that it was a very good alliance because most of the inhabitants in La Borda buy here, so this let them grow their movement, no, their sales, and they is a way of La Borda to open to the community and to be more present in the neighborhood. The last part that I wanted to mention related to rethinking the community, the collective housing. From what I heard, I think that you already mentioned somehow in Diego's presentation, no? But it's this idea of rethinking also the internal units, no, and how we can make them more flexible, more adaptive to the different households compositions and the changes, no? So this is the floor plan of the units of La Palma. We work on a layout that we call non-hierarchical or less hierarchical, meaning that you cannot see when you see the floor plan where is the parents' bedroom, where is the children bedroom, where is the living room. Actually, everything is in most of our designs. We try to leave it as flexible and as open to opportunities as possible. And for instance, in the case of La Borda, we have 28 units and they all completely different because people decided to close or not, or to put the living room in a way, or to leave it everything open. Here in La Palma, I think it works even better than in La Palma. In La Borda, there's some limitations. Here, there's a lot of different possibilities and different um, possibilities to change in the future, and to add or to subtract some rooms. In the case of La Borda, we had this structure similar to La Palma, but the layout is different, where we have a basic unit of 40 square meters um, that you can that has actually two rooms in between each unit. And depending if you have or not these rooms, you might have the small unit of 40 square meters, a medium apartment of 60 square meters, or a big apartment of 75 square meters. No, and these rooms they can change from one unit to the other because the physical structure is prepared to do so. No, so now we have in this case this big opening on this uh, on this apartment because it's connected to this, but this could be closed, and then you open the drywall that is on the other hall. But also the legal structure is prepared, no? That the contracts are separated for the rooms and the units themselves, so it's very easy in 1 week to change from one apartment to the other. Obviously, this as Diego was saying, no, it's very hard that happens. It almost happened in La Borda already on only 5 years living here. And what did happen a lot is there's been a lot of changes the last year of people moving around, no? Because there was one unit that people left, and this caused a lot of movements of then people moving to one apartment to another, people then going to the other apartment, because the first that we have the possibility to move to these units when they are vacant are the people living in the unit in La Borda itself, no, in the cooperative itself. In our case, this has allowed us also a lot of flexibility to adjust to the change of the people life, no? So we had couples with children who divorced, and they were able to stay both in the cooperative in different apartments, no? One in the big or medium apartment and the other in the small apartment, and stay together so they can take care of the child still together. This is Sotrak, which will start construction next month. Here we were able to add new typologies. On green, you have this satellite room that Diego was mentioning, no, that can be connected or can be used for one of the units or two units that share it, but it's not physically connected. This help us to make it more flexible to change in the future, no, that you don't need to change the physical aspect, the construction, you just change the legal of who has the right to use these rooms. And then we have these floors in Sotrak and in other projects. I think I have the floor plan. Yeah, for in Priu, it's also gonna start construction in September. And then we have these new units that we call clusters that maybe you've seen. I don't know when you were talking about Switzerland or Germany because it's more common there. Here it's pretty new to have this idea of even smaller units that they have a small kitchenette and they share because they want to share a lot more with their neighbors, not only once a week have a communal dinner, but they want to eat every day together, but not with whole community, no? So in this case, they share it 5, 6 households. They share these communal spaces, and we have a lot of, for instance, elderly people who live alone, people who know that they don't want to live with their partners, single mothers, no, so they can rely a lot in mutual support as well. This is something fair new because there was also a change in the regulation, no, like as you were asking and Diego mentioned before, in the last years, we've been seeing a lot of new adjustments to the law, to the new realities, no? And before, uh, because you could not count the communal spaces as part of the house, as Diego was saying, we were also very limited to do this type of houses. No, now we are, because of this all these changes regulations, we were able to deliver new housing solutions as well. And the last bite of the presentation, it's more on the sustainability. I would not go too much into the bioclimatic designs and so on. I guess you are familiar with solutions that we use. No, we just want to stress that in our case, even if we design almost passive houses, no, like more based on passive standards and passive solutions, we rely a lot on active users, no? So we rely a lot on people knowing how to use their house, no? So if you come to La Borda in summer, it would look like in the left, and if you come in winter, it would look like in the right, no? And even in the left, you see that there's a neighbor that didn't uh, roll down the blinds. So even there's a lot of community engagement in a way of neighbors telling each other, like, you should remember that it's summer and you should pull down your blinds if you don't want the sun to come in and to be in a more hot situation inside of the house, no? So obviously we use balconies as not only as good spaces, but as designed to control sun. Same in La Palma. In La Palma is even more kind of radical, the use of these balconies, because these balconies are at the same time the entrances of the units. No? So if you, for instance, live in the first unit in the row, you will have neighbors crossing in front of you. But this hasn't been a problem at all for the people living there. No, actually, many of them appreciate this transparency and this openness and connectiveness with the neighbors. This is just to talk about the more bioclimatic design of La Borda, but also how we use different solutions for different things. No, so for instance, this patio that is covered with a winter house to help us keep heat in winter. It was something that came out from the very early stages and participatory design, when we discussed with the users how they imagine their house. No, and a lot of people brought us images from patios, especially from center and the south of Spain, from Andalusia and so on. And we ended up, no, we had different solutions, and we ended up with this one because it worked very well for the bioclimatic design, but also it worked very well for the social aspect. No, we, instead of having corridors where you barely cross anybody, we have this open space in the middle where all the spaces face. So if you leave your house, you see if somebody else is leaving the house, if somebody is using the spaces. No, so for instance, it's very common for my child to look at the window to see if somebody is on the plate on this communal big space, and then she wants to go down to play with the others. And then in the case of well, in many of our projects, the only part that is more smart or more related to sensors and so on is this winter house. That is the only part that is more technical, although we use agricultural mechanics and solutions. No, it's not very sophisticated. But as I mentioned, no, we use a lot of training, we use a lot of discussing, a lot of monitoring to see how things are performing, if we need to adjust certain things. And if we don't do that, people will end up not being comfortable at home. No? And for us, this was important. Again, we could see how people were living before moving into La Borda, and we saw there was a lot of people in situation of energy poverty. So it was important for us that people didn't rely on use their heating because they could not afford it. No, so we really wanted to make it a very good performing building, also in terms of environmental justice. Now, after some years. We've been monitoring, and we were able to check how the La Borda was performing, and the result was pretty good. No, like the comfort is doing great, especially in winter. Summer has been more complicated because when you work with passive and heat, in our case, we depend much on having cool nights at summer that cool down the building. And the last 3 years, there's been no cool nights. We have tropical nights. The nights are very very hot. So we are a little bit at the edge, but at the limit. But with like fan ceilings and everything, the comfort is still reasonable. And what we saw is that we could see the impact on energy consumption and energy cost, and we are around half of the energy cost and consumption compared to same size units in the neighborhood. For us, also related to sustainability, what we do from the very first, no, the first thing when we do related to sustainability is to see what we cannot do, no, to see what we can save and avoid to do, because whatever you don't do, it's going to be more sustainable than even if you do it super sustainable. So, for instance, what the first thing that we managed not to do was underground parking. Here again there was a couple of years of fight together with the other cooperative to change a regulation that was in place in Barcelona that forced every new building to have underground parking. And La Borda was the first project that was not required to build underground parking. Instead, we provide bike parking for all the inhabitants in the building. And now all the new buildings apply the same rule. And then obviously we chose with the community the materials. We went for wood. Obviously we present the group different alternatives and a comparison and the pros and cons. And finally the group chose to go for wood, and when we finished, it became the tallest wood structure in Spain. Now has been surpassed by Cireres that you just saw. So we are still happy that it's a housing cooperative still on the top of this innovation process. And then this was for La Borda. This is for La Balma, where we did some learnings on the wood construction itself. I can go more into detail later if you want. And just to finish, what La Borda for us was the first project, but also was the first of its kind in our context. So we took a lot of effort as well to take all these learnings and to make them open and available for other people to follow us. And for us, when people ask us what's the thing that we are most proud of the project, to me at least, is that it's not the only project, that there's been more projects after, and that they could benefit from all the learnings. They could benefit from for instance, visiting. There's a lot of groups that come here and visit to think how they want to do their project or to see that this is possible. There's a lot of groups that use our legal system, our economic system. So this is the best that could happen, that this is actually helping a movement. So what we did after finishing La Borda was we helped to create this foundation called La Dinamo that actually has been helping other groups to do their own projects. And we do a lot of studies, and we try to share as much as we can. So I really advise you, if you want to learn more, to go to La Dinamo's website. It's only in Catalan, but if you go to the resources page of La Dinamo, there's a lot of documents that are even translated into English. And documents like this one that we did, that was to summarize the process of how to do a housing cooperative. Even this one in a shorter version, it's translated into English in La Dinamo's website. So yeah, I think that was pretty much because I wanted to leave some space for questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Carlos. It was amazing. Again, all the reflections, because you have a long experience until today of constructing, living, supporting projects, like you have been in this movement. So yeah, I don't know if someone wants to start with the questions from the participants. I guess there were many things, interesting things that you would be interested in. So yeah, you can open cameras if you want, address yourself the question or write it in the chat, as you wish.
Feel free to ask me questions about living in La Borda itself if you want. If you don't want to ask about technical questions.
I want to ask actually the same, uh, such a question, like because you mentioned in the end this flexibility of being able to change the apartments. There was, you mentioned one case that it almost happened, but in the end it didn't happen. So yeah, for example, this is a learning, right? That it's much easier to move to another apartment rather than creating these flexible modules.
Yeah, actually, related to that, there's something that we learned that we did differently in La Palma. In La
Mm-hmm.
Borda, there was a lot of flexibility on the customization of the kitchens. There was a lot of flexibility where you wanted to put the kitchen, so people could customize when they moved in a lot. They could, also the cooperative gave a very basic kitchen, and then people could pay or they could upgrade it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then we saw this was a burden when you wanted to change because then if you invested a lot of money in your kitchen and then you're moving into another one that hasn't invested or has do it in a different taste, then it would create problems on people wanting to move, no? And in La Palma, there's a less customization, but because we think it's more important to think about this possibility of moving, no? That happens more than we expected. We
Mm-hmm.
thought people would come here and would die here in their own apartments, and we saw that what's life? Life, your life changes. Suddenly you have a child grows and leaves, or suddenly you have a couple, and the couple divorce, and you or just or dies or whatever, and then you have space that you don't need. So there's a lot of changes on that, no? So we try, and it's a challenge, no? Especially with the groups that come approach, no? That to make them understand that their house is the whole building and that they should not uh, do decisions, especially design decisions that could limit their possibilities of changing in the future, because this can happen. And when I was reading also, and for instance, in cases of Zurich, 20% of the units were changing in 5-10 years as well. No, so I think it's important to have that in mind as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if someone is ready to ask the question.
Hi. Can I ask something?
Of course.
Nice. So I would like to ask how you can become a member of the housing cooperative, because I have heard about something like lists, waiting lists for people to enter, because your projects have become very famous in Barcelona.
Yeah, I didn't mention that because I wasn't sure if Diego mentioned it already. How it works here, all of our projects, even if they're in private land, we do only so far social housing, which means that the government controls the contracts. So in order to move in here, you need to fulfill the social housing criteria. Depending on each project, it's a little bit different, but there's always 3 requirements. That one is that you should have been living in the city of Barcelona for 2 years. You cannot have any other property, and there's a maximum of income that depends on each project. Uh, this is only the moment that you sign the contract. It's not only for cooperatives, it's all social housing in Spain. It's a weird system that they only check you when you sign the contract. 1 year after, you can be rich and you're still there, which is also good that they don't kick you out of your house because they raise your salary. in some projects, they've been doing things related to people who have bigger income, they pay more. In La Borda, we didn't reach that point yet. I think it's going to happen someday, but not yet because we just moved in recently. So people still in the same situation. We have people with lower incomes and people with middle incomes, but still more or less people is on this limit. And then what we do is we have a waiting list. Until last year, we had a very easy mechanism. When there was a vacancy, the first who was in the waiting list was the first who had the right to say if they wanted to move into this unit that was vacant. But we changed it last year because we wanted to favor some diversity. We saw, in our case, we are very diverse in terms of economics, really within this limits. We are diverse in terms of ages. We have retired people, we have families, we have young people, but we are not much very diverse in terms of origins. We have very few people that were not born in Europe, while in the neighborhood we do. So, for instance, in some cases we favored people from the waiting list, but with criteria that we set every time when there is a vacancy. So, for instance, if in 20 years there's too many retired and too very few young people, we would favor young people to move in. So this is the process for us. Each cooperative decides how they want to do it. Also, there's some that are restricted to certain collectives. Like there's one project in Barcelona for only elderly people. There's one project that we did that we will finish in a month that is only for women. So that depends on the cooperative. And then there's some interviews and so on, but the moment that you are approved to be a member, you have all the rights. You move in and you have all the rights as any other user. There is no, in other countries, I know that they might have 1 year period of test or something like that, but it can be complicated, if you don't pass the test, where do you end up living and so on. I don't know if you have some follow-up questions on that.
Yeah, I do. Thank you for your answer, though. So, like, La Borda, for example, is part of the national protected house system, let's say, like UPV.
In our case, yeah, because the land belongs to the municipality, and then all the units are listed as they are, in the category of protected house system. Yeah.
And it's like with the rental terms, let's say.
Yeah. So there's we have to fulfill the maximum rent similar to rental social housing.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And how many years is the maximum one person can rent a unit there?
Forever. So okay. The leasehold of the land in our case is for 75 years up to 90 years. When this finish, we still don't know what's going to happen. What is in the paper written is that we will have to transfer the building to the municipality, but hopefully if in 85 years we prove that we are doing a good job, I hope that they will renovate that. Anyway, people who move in here, they have contracts that they don't have expiration date. You can live here as much as you want, as long as you fulfill the requirements from the cooperative.
Okay.
So when you want to do any movement, let's say like make your house bigger or smaller, or this kind of movements that you were speaking, you contact, let's say, with the public authorities, or who deals with this stuff?
I mean, you have the first who has to approve it is the cooperative, has to approve these changes. And then depends on the case. For instance, if you change your unit, you need to sign a new contract. So you have to go again to the government to prove that this person is still valid to live. But with the rooms, as I mentioned, they have separated contract. So in this case, you don't need to go back to the government because it's an appendix to the contract. So you don't have to sign it again with the government in that case.
Okay, nice. Good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, I would also like to ask a question.
Sure.
Hi, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It might sound like a not important question, but I was curious. When we're talking about sharing communal spaces with the energy crisis that's going on, I was curious to see how are the utility bills separated for each household, because some households will have like a communal kitchen for the molecule that they are together, you know.
Yeah, in our case, and as much as I know all the cases that we work with, the communal spaces and the communal utilities like the laundry and everything, it's part of the fee that you pay every month. And in our case, it's based on the surface, no? So bigger apartments pay more, smaller apartments pay less. We had a lot of discussions on if we had to pay that by person, but then it's complicated because if the household composition changes, how you deal with that. And we ended up saying that this was fair enough. And then also, when you think about collective housing, it already happens, no? That if you have an elevator and you live in the ground floor, in the first floor, you will not use it, but you will pay it the same way that somebody that is living in the sixth floor and is using it every day, no? So we say it's a communal facility and we should share the cost same way. Then when it comes to the individual consumptions for water, electricity, and hot water. It's managed by the community, but every household pays what has been consuming. The only exemption that we do is that in La Borda, from the 28 units, there's 24 that face south, and these ones they have heating, but they don't use it because they are 20 degrees in winter, but we have four units that face north, and these ones they have to use it because they will be, if not 16 degrees. So they pay less for the hot water. It's the only thing that we decided to make more justice to be more equal in the building.
Okay, so it depends on the situation and the scale of which the people the communal spaces and the housing, the square meters and things like that.
The cost depends on the square meter, depends on the square meters, but the square meters normally relate to the occupation. Like a big apartment, we have a rule that if you want to live in a big apartment, you have to be at least two people. So there's always going to be 2, 3, 4 people in a big apartment. Smaller apartments, I think we only have one case that in a small apartment there's two, like a mother and her son living there. All the rest is single people. So it's already adjusted to people, and people then it's adjusted to consumption in a way.
I see. Thank you.
I see there's some questions
Yeah, there are some written ones. So Alexandros is saying, hello, thanks for the presentation. How can you ensure that the community rules will be the same in the future?
No, you don't. They change a lot. Cooperatives, they have 2 books of rules. There's one book of rules, the statutes. These ones are public and they have to go to a public notary and register, and they are checked by the government. So they are very rigid and you don't change them that much. I think this year we will have to change them for the first time. And then we have another set of rules that we call règim intern in Catalan, like internal regime. These ones are more flexible. No, in our case, we have a meeting every 2 months where we discuss things, and many of these things that we discuss are rules that we change. No, like the one I just mentioned about how people move in. So this was something that was changed. There's certain things that because of the statutes or because of the contracts or because of the contract that we have with the municipality or with the leasehold, they are secured. No, so for instance, you cannot resell your unit because it doesn't belong to you; it belongs to the cooperative. So there are certain things that we are secure that there will be no speculation, for instance, no, or the rules also it's very much written what you can do and what you cannot do with your house. So if you are doing a bad use, if you're renting your unit to Airbnb, you will lose your contract, no? So these kind of things, no? So there's certain things that are hard to change because you need 2/3 of all the members. And in our case, there's also members that don't live here. There's people who support the project, but they don't live here and they are part of they have also a vote, so they could see if we want to suddenly become rich and raise the whatever or what not, they could say, hey, you cannot do that. So, and then there's everyday things that it's normal, they change because after you move in, you see that maybe you had some ideas or there's new agreements. So in that regard, it's normal that some things change. And then
And there is another one from Stella. She's saying, thank you for your presentation. We noticed that you use wood often in your projects, which is a material that requires high maintenance over the years. What is your contribution in terms of materiality maintenance?
yeah, and in our case, when we pay our fee, which in our case is average a little bit more than 500 euros, like the smaller apartments, they pay 400 euros per month, the biggest 600 and some. In there, now the majority of the fee goes back to pay all the loans. But even from the first day, there's a little fee for maintenance, you know, with the idea that in the future, we need to do some reparations or improvements or whatever. And we, in a way that we don't have to pay extra in 10 years if we need to do some renovation. In there, there's been also maintenance for the wood. Like the wood that you see in the structure doesn't need much maintenance, which had just to do last year in a small place of the building. We had to do an adjustment because there was a construction problem from the beginning, but it was not a maintenance problem. It was a construction problem from the construction period. And then what we do, for instance, is a lot of maintenance with windows frames, you know, and these are made of wood as well. And the ones that are exposed in the south, we need to paint them every 5 years, which happened this year again, no? So this is something that the cooperative takes care, pays, and is the first interested that the building keeps its performance and its value and that it's still working well. So it's taken from the cooperative itself. And actually, wood has not been much of a problem. The problem that we had, the biggest problem that we had the last 5 years and that we're still facing is the communal heating and hot water. This is something that we don't know why is causing a lot of troubles, not only to us, but a lot of this type of projects. Maybe the technology was not much advanced at the moment. Maybe we went for the cheapest, and you know what you say, if you go to the cheapest, it will give you trouble. So we're still having to find a solution because it's giving us every few weeks, there's small problems that they need to come to adjust. So, well, some innovations give us trouble, yeah.
Great. Another question I see from Danai. Wait. Thank you for this very interesting presentation. I would like to ask, how do you incorporate in the design process the needs of people with disabilities?
Yeah, this is something that in La Borda didn't came too much because all the people were almost fully able when we were designing. Obviously, in the time this can change. But for instance, in Sotrac that will start a construction now, this was something that was very much incorporated from the very beginning because there were already people living there with special needs. So I cannot speak 100% from that because I was not in this project, but I would say something that we do in these projects is that especially now after La Borda. La Borda was there were some limitations, but after La Borda, is that especially communal spaces should be as much for universal design as possible, no, and not only thinking on wheelchairs, but also thinking on people with visual problems or people with memory problems or whatever, no. So we try to put a lot of effort in the communal spaces so that they are welcome to everybody. For instance, that all the communal spaces are that you can reach them with the elevator, that you have an accessible toilet, and so on. And then in the inner apartments, there I think that you can have different possibilities. For instance, in La Borda, something that we were discussing is like, okay, it's very if you want to do some things adapted to a wheelchair for all the apartments, it's going to be an extra cost, and maybe it's not needed. You will be investing a lot of money in something that nobody needs at the moment. So what we said, it's like, okay, if we need to do, like, everything is like can be adapted, and if we need to adapt certain things, it will be the cooperative who pay the extra cost for that, for the specific unit that need it, no, and not for all the units. Obviously, also because the needs of people can be different, no. So maybe you do an apartment that is adjusted for a wheelchair, but then a blind person comes in, or a person with problems with the hand comes in and has other needs. Then I think it's also it's actually something that we're discussing a lot lately because of this project in Sotrak, and I think there's also a lot of room to improve, no, on how cooperatives deal with people who have special needs in housing, because we have a very old stock of housing. So every time we do this new type of housing, we should, I don't know, bigger, maybe bigger projects should have from the very beginning one unit that is adapted, and it's always specific for people with specific needs, no? Because then it's easier to manage, easier to choose and to give to people with specific needs. I see there's more questions now.
Yeah, another question. Also, if you want to open your cameras, you're free to address them yourselves. But
Don't be shy.
so don't be shy. So Maria is asking, did you as designers or the residents face any challenges in regards to bureaucracy of municipal authorities? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, every project has its own bureaucracy problems, no? Because these type of projects are new for everybody, are new for the people who give the permits in the municipality, for the firemen or fire brigades, for the people in the register, for ownership, for the loans. So every project had to face legal bureaucracy challenges. What the way we took it is that more or less in each project we fight one battle. No, so for instance, in La Borda we fought the battle of underground parking, but we gave up with the battle that Diego was mentioning of having only one contract for electricity. Here we have 29 contracts for electricity, and was something that we didn't want, but we didn't have the energy to fight every single battle. So we decided, okay, this is the most important for us, and then the next project we'll fight, or once we are living here, we will join others, no? And now the good thing is that we have the Federation of Housing Cooperative. We have different groups where all the housing cooperative we meet, and we can lobby together with the government, with the organizations, the different public organizations to change alternatives. Or for instance, with this foundation of La Dinamo, we also published some guides for public workers, because we saw that there's a lot of things that depend on the local level. And then you went to one municipality and the technical staff said, yeah, this is possible. And then you went to another municipality, and with the same law, the technical staff said, no, this was not possible. So we did booklets or guidelines for public workers to help them read the law in a way that we think it favors the cooperatives, because we saw very crazy situations, like going to very small villages saying, no, we cannot do that. and cities like Barcelona that has a lot of lawyers, a lot of bureaucracy, allowing us to do the very same thing. No, so we also help people do in a way that it was easier for them. Like if you have this text, you can do this in a legal way, no, and you are also more safe to help cooperatives to progress.
Great. And then Manuel says, hello, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. What will the monthly fee be used for once the loans are paid off?
Yeah, obviously, after 30 years, when the loans are not there, we could lower the fee and just pay for maintenance and everyday use and so on. In our case, what we decided was to keep it more or less as it is. Well, we will see in 30 years, but the principle now is to keep it as it is because we want to save money for the cooperative. First of all, so we can help other cooperatives, no? So we can lend money to other projects so they can build their own project. Or for instance, if our children want to make their own project and they need a loan, we can also loan them the money. And also because if you remember, I told you that we have a leasehold of the land that finishes in 85 years. So if the municipality decides that we cannot stay here anymore, then we will have savings so that people that will be here, not me, in 85 years, will have money to build their own project, no, and it will be easier for them to continue living somewhere else, no, because at the end the cooperative, what they do is they provide you the stability that you have the right to live somewhere. So this is also savings for the future.
Great. I don't know if there is anybody else that wants to ask anything. I have a question if
I don't know if Marina
okay, go Marina.
Hello, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for the presentation. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to ask something more about the social impact of La Borda or some of your other projects, but mainly La Borda because you're a resident there too. So have you noticed in the last 5 years like a change in the neighborhood, or has your life been impacted better with living in the cooperative?
Yeah, in the residence, definitely. That I mean, we even have there's an agency in Barcelona of public health who's doing a study and who studied people before moving to La Borda and the years after moving in La Borda, and they proved that there's an increase even in health of the people in most of the categories. When you talk to people here, there's a lot of benefits of stability, of saving, of especially of mutual aid. There's a lot of support into each other, of people having the possibility to host their extended families that live abroad. No, all these opportunities that the project give to us. This has definitely been a positive impact. Then on the general impact in the neighborhood, here we are not sure. We know that we've been offering good examples, no? Like we are as much open as we can regarding to visits. We have every 2 weeks visits from schools from the neighborhood and so on. We also, even if I mentioned that it's hard for us to leave our communal spaces because of what I mentioned. We still do it. We leave our spaces for some organizations that we are very close and they can use it for their meetings. Or for instance, the guest rooms sometimes have been used for people who have been evicted of their houses and they were waiting for relocation. So in a way, we have been trying to have a bigger positive impact as we could. But we are also aware that we are wild capitalist world, and that if we can be part of gentrification in a way. The neighborhood where we are is lower middle class. Has been always below the mean in the average in Barcelona. And suddenly, for instance, a couple of years ago, there's this magazine called Time Out that is in many countries, and every year they publish a list on the coolest neighborhoods in the world. And a couple of years ago, our neighborhood was the coolest neighborhood in the world, or the top three, I don't know. And the first image that they put was La Borda. So we even if we don't want it and we try to battle to find that, we are in a system that tries to take use of everything they can to make money and to make profit. And we've seen around us, for instance, co-living projects, and selling all the communal spaces that before nobody talked about, and now they see as a positive aspect. But instead of charging you for 500 euros, they charge you 1,000 euros. So definitely, these projects, we think they can have a positive impact. For instance, there's one that we just finished, and people will move in after summer. That is in a municipality 1 hour from Barcelona called Manresa, that was losing population. These ideas of shrinking cities, intermediate cities, that they lose population because bigger cities like Barcelona attract most population. So the municipality used this project to try to bring back people into the city, in their own municipality. So I think there's ways that these projects, they can be used for good, and obviously it's very hard to fight the use that evil can do of your projects.
Yeah, I understand. I was just thinking how when people live together and that makes them, better in their lives and communicating with their neighborhoods and connecting, and that would create opportunities for a wider system of support.
Inside La Borda, definitely. And also La Borda has been using its image and its power to help other projects to start, or to get the land, or to whatever. So in that regards, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
And if I can take my question also. I wanted to ask you, Carlos, in terms of activities, let's say, you mentioned the once per week dinner that you have tonight. And I was wondering, like, I don't know if it's in a formal or an informal way, if you have tried to create activities for the kids, or if there are, I don't know, what could it be? If you have decided on some sort of, or mutual support, if you have organized it in a way, or if it's all informal and spontaneous, this kind of things.
There is both. Actually, something that happened and that we realized last year or a couple of years ago was that during the development process, we were having a lot of meetings, it was a lot of hard work. And after we moved in, we followed the same hard work because we had to finish the communal spaces, we had to pay back the loans. So we were meeting every month, having a lot of debates. And a couple of years ago, we said, enough, like, we need to start enjoying what we have. So we decided to do less meetings and more parties. And even a couple of months ago, we have different commissions. There's one commission for maintenance, one commission for communication, one commission for conviviality, and one for economy and legal aspects. And we decided to create a new one for parties because we saw that we needed to celebrate more. And now something very nice that happened is that last week or 2 weeks ago, we did for the second time in the last year a big party with the other housing cooperatives in the neighborhood. We have 5 housing cooperatives in the neighborhood that they are building, or they have the land. So we invited them, and we were 80, 90 people eating together and was very nice. We did this 5-year celebration. We have a lot of people who sing, who dance, who are poets. So we did a party with all this. It was kind of a Got Talent show, like everybody doing their own art and enjoying. And also something that we incorporated last year was when we have assemblies, we also have somebody who's taking care of the children, and we take turns on taking care of the children. Before it was only pleasure, playing with the kids, but now we also incorporated some time of discussing with the kids, also because now they became older. And it was very interesting. Last year, they participated 2 or 3 times to, we had separated meetings, and then we joined, and they explained us what they were discussing and how they wanted to improve some spaces, or how they wanted to change the menus on the dinners. And has been very, very interesting to see their point of view and how they wanted to change certain things, and they were also evaluating some of our spaces. It was very interesting.
Amazing. Someone else opened the camera before. I don't know if.
No, but there is a question in the chat. Maybe it should be the last one. It's already 8. We've kept Carl's. Carl, you hit the record of questions, I have to say.
Nice.
In the seminars, you get the question prize. So yes, there is a question thanking, of course, about the presentation, and well, having the experience of La Borda, which do you consider to be the most important spaces for everyday life?
So yeah, as I mentioned, it's not everyday life, but something that has been like beyond our expectations, and that when people come, all the users, they tell them you should incorporate guest rooms in your house, in your projects, because they became very handy for keeping your ties with your families and your friends that are abroad and so on, or even sometimes to have some people who's living in Barcelona, but you need them to be close because you got surgery or whatever, no? And then something that I have the impression is that also the smaller spaces that can be more controlled work better than these big spaces that maybe look nice in the pictures, but they are very hard to control, very hard to use in a more informal way, So at the end, the kitchen and the living room, they are used for many things. Like there's people on Monday that do yoga. There's a lot of informal meetings or people who get there to work during the day, So, and then when you look at this big multifunctional space, has been used less than we expected, for several reasons, especially the materiality and the limitations that we had for economics. But I don't know, it's also, to me, more than the spaces themselves, what we've seen is that it's important that they are good spaces, that they are spaces where you want to go. So now this is something that we work a lot with the communities, that they don't give the worst space to the communal space because it's the one that has the worst views, or the one that is more access, if it's difficult to access, but the other way around, that it's something that you almost have to cross. So it's very hard, it's very easy that you cross your neighbors, or that is the one that has the better views and is the most nice part of the building. So you really want to go there and you really want to use it, and sometimes it also goes connected to how your internal unit is, In my case, I know that my living room is very small, but 99% of the time it's only 3 people. So it's enough for 3 people. And I know that I can host up to 8 people for a dinner. And then if we are 9, we go down. So, but if I had a big living room where I could have 20 people, I would go less to the communal living room. No, so it's also connected in what do you favor? Do you favor the domestic individual spaces, or you favor communal domestic spaces? No, so it's not only the matter of if you put a kitchen or if you put whatever. It's also the question on how you design the global.
Great, and I think we're right on time. So, Carlos, thanks so much. It's been really great. And we will be happy to share with you all the recordings from the seminars,
Yes, please.
and the links of Cohab and what will be
And
all
the
the material
results.
that we're using for advocating for cooperative housing in Greece.
Thank you very much. I wish you the best with your projects. I guess I always think that for countries like Greece, it's easier to look to Spain than to Switzerland. That can be a little bit overwhelming because we have similar contexts.
Exactly. It's more hopeful.